Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about a path which you can actually follow in order to turn yourself into a React developer. But before I actually move ahead, I would like to give a short disclaimer. This path is designed based on my personal experience and is the one which I followed personally. Hence, uh, there could be some topics with which you may disagree with me, so you can actually omit them and follow the ones which you think are essential for you. Let's move ahead. Now, in order to turn yourself into a React developer, or let's suppose if you are starting it from the very basic, the first thing you should know is are the three fundamental of the web, and that are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. With HTML, you should have a basic understanding of how you can actually create a structure. And but before even you move ahead, or you can create a structure, you should have the fundamental understanding of the HTML, then should know the basic different attributes, different like how you can create the forms, how you can create the tables. And once you are done with that, try and practice try and practice them with by creating some sort of a small application and create a sort of a structure which can just like give you a hint that okay, you know a lot about HTML already. Now, within the track that we were actually doing in the Spark, we already actually challenged ourselves with all these core stuff, so we already knew about them. Later on, we moved towards the second path, which is second track, in fact, which is like the CS second pillar, you can say, which is the CSS. So with the CSS, you should have the basic understanding of this, all those properties that actually gets used in order to style your HTML. Once you have the basics, or you can say foundation of CSS done, then you should move towards the grid and flex. Once you are done with the flex layouts, you should move towards the responsiveness and media queries. And finally, once you have all the understanding, once you have the your skill set clear for the CSS, you should try and practice them. How? By trying and convert a design. So you can just use any sort of like a PSD and try and convert that, or maybe just try and style your form, or maybe just try and style your table. This way, the more you will practice, the more you will know the CSS. Within the Spark program, we obviously actually tested you for all these code as well. Then later on, we jumped into the third pillar, which is the JavaScript. With JavaScript, one should have a knowledge of the fundamentals of the JavaScript, the variables, the arrays, the functions, the operators and operations and conditions and the loops. Again, with Spark, we actually touched down, like we went through all those topics and actually challenged you on all those stuffs, and you were actually able to pass them. Now, moving on, the next up, which is the advanced form of JavaScript, was the ES6. With ES6, one should know let and constant, one should know the arrow function, one should have understanding of the spread operator, destructuring, default, how you can actually use the default parameters within the functions, the template literals, classes, and the promises. The topics we actually have touched are the let and constant, arrow function, the spread operator, default function parameters, and template literals. While there are few which you can still learn, which is the destructuring, classes, and promises. Again, you can combine them with the React. Once you're building the application, you can just like reference them and learn the new style. Though some sort of like certain things you can still do it with the old way, or you can say old syntax. Like for example, if it's destructuring, you can use the old methods in order to create your application. But still, it's good that one should know the modern ways of writing the application, so you should go for them. And while the ones which we tested you at Spark were these five topics. Later on, we move towards the React. But before moving on to the React, I would like to take you to a certain skill set, which as in general everyone should know these days, especially if you're a programmer or you are trying to sort of like create a career in this domain. So one should have a understanding of the version control. The ones I use personally are GitHub and Bitbucket. I mean, you can go for either terminal approach or GUI approach, whichever you find it to be easier. You can just use that, but you should actually have a bit of understanding of then how you can use it. If you haven't used it till yet, you should actually learn this. The next step is obviously the data structures in the algo. As a CS student, one I'm sure you must have deep understanding of the data structures and how you can actually create the algorithms. So that is something like very normal these days for CS students. But if let's suppose you are not a CS student, I would say just go online, Google them, and learn about them as well. Later, since we are working over web, so we should have a knowledge of HTTP and HTTPS protocols. We should know how we can use terminals. Then for React, it's important that how you can use different package managers like npm or yarn for installing the packages. So that is pretty important for React, especially let's suppose you are moving ahead with React as a front end language, or you can say as your front end library for different projects. So I'm sure, just like if you remember, we installed Bootstrap. So we use a certain way, like npm install whatever the package name was. So that's basically we were using the package manager over there. Apart from all these topics, you should also know how you can set up your application. So, for example, I want to now deploy my application. So I will need to have a domain and the hosting. So how you do that? You actually use certain platforms like GoDaddy or Bluehost or Media Temples, or maybe even the local ones even over here. And you should know over there like topics like FTP, how you can use FTP, or maybe softwares like FileZilla over there, how you can use them all together in order to deploy. Then later on, once in case, let's suppose you are missing one of the skills, you just go and just learn them. They are pretty easy, and you can learn them in parallel as well. Now, coming back to React, so in Spark, we actually touched down on the foundations and some certain topics we took from advanced, and certain topics we took from the ecosystem as well. So we have with the found I think more or less you can say 80 to 90% of the topics are already covered with the foundation. So we learned through Create React App. We now know how to write the syntax, and we know the functional and class components. We know what are props, states, how we can use state and use effect, how we can set the state and component lifecycle methods. We haven't touched down the keys yet, but I remember that we touched down the lists over there. We have learned the conditional rendering. We know how we can actually build simple forms, like how we can take inputs and can actually um, use them to in order to like give outputs, like we did in the BMR application. Now, once we have the foundation cleared, we can move towards the advanced topics. In Spark, we touched down the HTTP requests, especially the GET one. We use the fetch over there. The package that you can use other than the fetch is by default. So you can go for a package like Axios, and you can use post and get both the methods over there. Then other advanced topics are like refs and error binding, context, higher order components and rendering props, portals, hooks. These are pretty important these days. Use callback, use reducer, use context, use reference, use memo, or you can even create your own custom hooks. Later down the line, we do plans to create some hourly classes or hourly camps in order to give introduction to these topics around certain applications. So stay tuned on them. Now, in the ecosystem, we had touched certain topics like CSS framework. So we have used how the Bootstrap over there. The other option that you have is the Material UI. You should actually go and learn that. With styling, you have the inline styling as an option. You had the style components, or you can even use the CSS preprocessors over there. So with the CSS preprocessor, you have post CSS, SAS, and SCSS or less. In few days time you are going to actually see an hourly camp for the SCSS, so you can join that in order to actually learn how you can style using the SCSS. And this is again one of the modern ways of writing CSS, so one should go for it. The other stuff that we actually touched on in Spark, it was the routing. So we have used React routers. The other option is obviously a Redux first router, which you can use along with the Redux. And obviously, once you know a lot about the advanced and the foundation, you can go for state management. And with that comes the Redux. It's a little tricky topic. It may take a while for you to understand this. So I'll say that what you should do it is make sure that you have a strong foundations first, and then attempt these topics, or maybe join one of our early camps in order to learn this. Later, once you have learned through all of this, you can move towards learning like more advanced forms. So you can use the React for creating mobile application by using the React Native. The other options that you have is Next.js, Firebase. You can use TypeScript. You can use storybooks. You can have create your own React libraries. You can even go for Gatsby. So that's about it for the React. Like sort of like a whole path you can see, and I am hopeful that you can follow this in and just fill in the gaps, like the ones which we missed out or the ones which we haven't covered yet, which are advanced. Just start doing one by one, and the best approach is obviously by challenging yourself with some sort of an application, because you learn a lot while you develop something out. So I would say to follow the same approach which we have used in Spark.